then once you've got the rows and columns chosen, you pick one of them to pull down here. And now notice that this automatically will pull in, it does a sum. And we don't want to be adding those up. That's why we've got zeros right here. We want to do a, we want to change it to be count. So you couldn't quite see that, so let me move this here. Oops. What it is there's it's the value field settings here. So you click that, and we want to change that from a sum to a count. So then once we're counting them, we get that nice, we get the contingency table that we're supposed to be getting. And if you don't do that, it looks something like this. So I've got the wrong version down here below. This is if you summed up using stocks and bonds, you end up with something that's too big, it doesn't match. So, and actually, if you work, and when you work it all the way out, you get a different number, which it's so exciting when you find that out. Not really. So, once you've got the good contingency table, you want to copy it and paste values. So I'm on the home menu there, and I'm pasting values. All right, so now I've got my contingency table. And so these are column totals, these are row totals, and this is the total. So to calculate a chi-square statistic, we need to be comparing the proportion of that was actually observed against the proportion we would have expected. When I do this, I'm not going to divide by 1,000, since everything would have been divided by 1,000, would all cancel out. And so what you actually need is the following. So we want to take the one that actually happened, so 2,617 is what we actually got. And then we're going to subtract from that the expected proportion, which we calculate as the column total times the row total divided by the total. So I've got my column total here, and then I'm going to multiply by the row total, and then divide by the total. And that's it for the numerator and for the moment. But we're going to drag this. We need a chi-square number for all of the cells in this table. And so that means we need to do some relative cell references. So in particular, this column total needs to switch columns when we switch columns, but stay in row 14. So I'm going to point at that B14 reference and hit F4 1, 2 times. Right now we've locked in row 14, but the column is free to change. Similarly, we want this cell to stay in this column, but to change rows. So I'm going to 1, 2, 3, lock in the column. This last one we want to stay put. So I'm going to push it just once. Okay, so that quantity gets squared. So we square that, and then we divide by that expected proportion again. So this is what it was in the numerator, so we do the same thing in the denominator. Again, I'm going to put it in parentheses. So again, we've got actual proportion minus expected proportion squared divided by expected proportion. This is the deviation from what you'd expect for this cell. Right? This cell maps to here. So the chi-square statistic is generated by adding up all of these deviations for every cell. So we need to drag fill down, need to fill to the right. We've got all of our deviations here, and then we need to add them up. So I use the sum function, a box. We get 36.099, and if you remember from before, that is our SPSS number. So we've gotten to the same place using Excel. So we have our statistic, but now we need to generate a p-value. So the way we find a p-value is we use the chi-square distribution function. CHIDIST. Okay, so the chi-squared distribution function in Excel asks for asks for x, which is the actual value of the chi-square. So we're going to click here. And then it also wants the degrees of freedom. So the degrees of freedom on a chi-square test is the number of columns in your contingency table minus 1 times the number of rows in your contingency table minus 1. We have 5 columns, which means we take 4 times 2 columns minus 1, 1. So 4 times 1 is 4. And that will get us our p-value. So this is very small. And it was similarly small in SPSS. And so we would say that there is indeed a difference, that different groups in terms of securities ownership have a different they have different proportions of loan approvals. Right, so if you're in category 5, you get approved very frequently. If you're in category 1, you're approved much less frequently. And so we would type again 36.099 in our assignment here. Okay, so now that we've done this 2 ways, let's save it and see if we did it right. And there it is. So hopefully that can happen to you many, many times. I guess 8 in particular, and that you found this video useful. Thank you, and good luck.